scene. And now, since she's gone, you know, I've had to turn into a...
There, you know?
A pregnant woman who vanished.
Kelsey was 8 weeks pregnant, last seen in Pueblo, visiting her boyfriend.
Friends and family would get text replies back, but they said that it just didn't quite sound like Kelsey.
I did have a sinking feeling in my stomach.
This unknown man is seen walking to Kelsey Schelling's car and is seen driving away with the car.
I mean, we're trying everything. Breaks my heart.
Almost 2 years after Kelsey's disappearance, a mysterious message giving everyone hope comes through that Help Find Kelsey Facebook page.
It was saying, if I have information about Kelsey, can I remain anonymous?
When Laura responds, a man emails her saying, "Ma'am, please, your daughter is not dead." Kelsey Schelling grew up in the tiny farm town of Holyoke, Colorado.
Holyoke is around 2.5 to 3 hours away from Denver.
It's quiet. It's kind of have your own way.
Perfect place to raise a family.
Yeah, real good place. Yeah, safe. You're hoping anyway, you know.
Holyoke is definitely agricultural. There's only one stoplight, and if you want to go to a Walmart, you've got to head west to Sterling. That's 50 miles away.
In the early 90s, Kelsey's parents, Doug and Laura, owned the local grocery store in Holyoke. Kelsey and her brother Colby seemed to be living out the American dream. I first met Laura Saxton back in 2016 when 2020 was first looking into Kelsey's story.
You know, she's just always been a little firecracker. Hi, Cal. Hi, Cocoa Bean.
Kelsey. Kel.
She wasn't a kid that wanted to stay up till midnight, you know, where you usually have to fight your kids to go to bed, like at 8:30. Yeah. That's when she wanted to go to bed. She'd go into her room and pull back her covers, and each animal had to be in a certain place, and everything had to be just perfect.
When she got to be 2, 3, 4 years old, she was feisty. Or you'd try to give her a kiss, and she'd slap me pretty good, so I kind of learned my lesson, you know.
My first impression of Kelsey, she was just an active, outdoors, fun-loving girl, liked to do a lot of sports. When my daughter and Kelsey first met up, their true love was playing basketball together.
I was her coach, yeah. Here she is right here.
Wow. Is she the point guard?
Mm-hmm.
When we were still in elementary school, her dad took us out and let us drive on the dirt roads, which is pretty common around here. Kelsey could just laugh about things like that, and her laugh made us laugh. She'd start to giggle, then you would start to giggle, and so that's what made being around Kelsey so special.
Kelsey was a tiny little thing, you know, shorter than me.
The Kelsey that I knew didn't take a lot of crap off of her classmates. You know, she wasn't afraid to stand her ground.
But as Kelsey enters her teens, the Schelling family is rocked when Doug and Laura decide to divorce.
Going through a divorce is really hard as a kid.
Yeah, the split of our parents certainly had an impact on both of us.
Colby.
Colby lived with me and Kelsey lived with her mom. It was a real dark time for the whole family.
It was a rough age. You know, after her dad and I got divorced, it was just she and I together alone for a lot of years.
She was in a bad emotional place, and I don't think that was due to her character and nature. I think that was circumstantial.
When Laura and I was going through a divorce, she was on antidepressant pills, and she ended up taking like 3 of them or something.
She ended up in the hospital for several days, and it was pretty scary. I mean, I thought we were going to lose her at that point.
She was in a coma?
She was.
I felt like it was a turning point. I mean, when any young school-age kid has parents who are splitting up, that's a lot to take on. She actually stopped doing all of the sports and activities. It seemed like she was more removed.
I think Kelsey was just looking for a change. She wanted to figure out what was her niche.
Kelsey was always, I think, working through, how do I be better? How do I grow? How do I move past this?
Our senior year, she was the prom queen. You don't get that without showing people kindness and respect and truly being embraced by your peers, you know.
Kelsey taught me, she taught me perseverance.
Eventually, she moves on. She goes to Northeastern Junior College. What did she want to do with her life?
She wanted to get a degree in psychology. I think in her heart, she wanted to work with children.
We officially became roommates January 2011. If all of us were bored at 3 o'clock in the morning, she'd be the one to say, let's go cause problems, I guess. Not bad problems, she was just, out for a good time. She loved to have fun. That was her thing to do.
And for a while, carefree Kelsey is back. And then she meets Dante Lucas. He's about to change her life forever.
It was a big deal that she was dating Dante. He was part of the basketball team. They were kind of the popular kids and everything. By the time Kelsey got to know him, she felt proud that she knew who he was because he was somebody to know.
He had dreams of making it big in the NBA.
Kelsey thought she met the man of her dreams.
Marker.
Please say your full name and give us your title.
Lisa Wayne, attorney at law. Well, I had the privilege of being down in Pueblo in the 80s, and I was a public defender. Pueblo's a small town in southern Colorado. Used to be a steel mill town. The steel mill shut down in the 80s.
Pueblo was founded and built by people that came from all over the world.
We're the home of the Pueblo chili. Everyone that lives there is so proud of this town.
Kelsey's love interest, Dante Lucas, lives in Pueblo. Sarah Lucas, Dante's mother, is raising all 4 kids on her own in this Colorado town, set on what's called the Front Range of the Rocky Mountains. In the town of Pueblo, a 6'7" star athlete stands out.
I coached Dante Lucas in youth football. He was a coach's dream. He was a real polite kid, wanted to learn the game of football and just really quiet. Dante Lucas was super close with his mother, Sarah. On the football field, she was one of the most supportive parents. For Dante, football wasn't his sport. I'd say he's a better basketball player, which happened later in his career through high school here in Pueblo.
Dante Lucas was a very well-known basketball player. He was going to be the one who made it out of Pueblo.
He had dreams of making it big in the NBA.
It was obvious that he wanted to pursue it, but the family spoke more about it than he did. We were told by Dante's mom, Sarah, that he was getting contacted from North Carolina and Kentucky. Their dream was that he was going to make the NBA and make a good life for himself.
When I first met Dante, he was a freshman here at Central High School. He was 6'7". If you have that kind of size, you can make a lot of things happen.
It just amazed me as a guy in class that was so quiet was just as popular as he was.
He was a really good role model for the young kids in the neighborhood.
His attitude was always good. He was good with his teammates. He just matured into a very good basketball player.
His overall drive as a student from day one, it wasn't up to snuff. As a teacher, I'd try to get him involved with the rest of the class. I talked to him about that several times.
Whether it was his grades or his skill, Dante didn't get into an NCAA school, but he wanted to continue to play basketball. Dante gets recruited to Northeastern Junior College in Sterling, Colorado. He's playing basketball when he meets Kelsey Schelling, and they begin dating.
Kelsey and another one of our roommates actually went to a basketball game and were scouting out the cute boys on the team, saw Dante and decided to go up and talk, and that's how she and Dante met. By the time Kelsey got to know him and really got kind of involved, she felt proud that she knew who he was because he was somebody to know. They spent a lot of their extra free time together.
When did you first meet him?
I never met him. I saw him play basketball a couple times.
Kelsey never really said anything about bringing him home to meet the parents.
He was not committed to her by any means.
Kelsey could have had anybody, but she kind of always took attraction to people that needed help, that she thought she could turn around.
I believe that if Dante was, failing or had bad grades, that his basketball career at the school would be definitely on pause. I don't honestly think that Dante really cared to learn. Kelsey would try to help him. He would just seem very disinterested and not really care.
I think she just hoped if she was good enough to him that, he would realize that, she's the one.
I think Kelsey stayed with Dante because she found someone that gave her attention even if it wasn't the right kind of attention. And I think Dante was with Kelsey because he got money from Kelsey, borrowed Kelsey's car, basically lived a life that everyone works for but didn't have to do anything for it. Just had to be there.
There were good days in the relationship with Dante, and then it just went south. He would play with her heart. I could definitely see some bubbliness fading out as he broke her spirit.
Kelsey texts Dante, "I'm really hurt. The way you talk about me to other people is your true feelings. I guess I'm just a fool. I'm so heartbroken." Days later, Dante would respond, "My phone's been dead the past few days."
And then afterwards she'd be like, "Oh, well, he's better, he's gonna be better." And then she'd be happy.
Dante left Northeastern Junior College because he was kind of done with his studies.
After Kelsey leaves Northeastern Junior College, she lands in California, but she doesn't stay there long. Why did she decide to leave?
Mostly it was financial reasons.
Where did she go from there?
That's when she moved back to Colorado, was living in Denver in her dad's apartment, and she had started working at Floor & Decor.
When did she start going out with Dante again?
Over the holiday time frame, November, December, he would stay with her, but then he'd go back to Pueblo sometime.
Were you worried that he would come back and what that would do to her?
Absolutely. I saw what it was like before, and I didn't want that to happen to her again. She didn't want that to happen to her again, because she knew the kind of person that she became when she was with him.
How in the world did they get back together?
I don't know. She missed him, I guess.
Kelsey has a surprise for her family. She's pregnant.
She called me when she found out she was pregnant, and she was stressed, very stressed. I could tell she was scared to tell me. Just told her, "I will support you. It's going to be okay." She was happy.
Did she tell you anything about Dante's reaction?
She said he was mad.
She and Dante would be texting, and he would stop responding either during arguments that they were having. She would then get upset, wait to hear back from Dante, and left in limbo, and it was very aggravating for her.
Kelsey texts Dante, "You were my best friend. The only thing I lived for day after day. What happened to us? It wasn't supposed to be like this."
One time I'd talk to her and she'd say, he's kind of coming around, and Dante will never abandon the baby.
But a child with Kelsey was not in Dante's plans.
Kelsey gets a text from Dante, and he says that he has something for her. He alludes to a surprise, and he wants her to come to Pueblo.
Kelsey had come home. When she was here, she slept a lot. I knew it was hard on her working full-time in Denver. Now with the new pregnancy, she was really tired. I said, "I will support you. Whether Dante is in the picture or not in the picture, it's going to be okay." She was happy. She wanted that baby. She wanted to be a mom.
She was in a good place.
Yes. So I'm thankful for those couple of days that we got before she went missing.
My name is Zach Hillstrom. I am a reporter at the Pueblo Chieftain. I think that people have been trying to fill in the blanks about what happened to Kelsey from the time that it happened, and not just when the mystery seemed like it might be a permanent one. On February 3rd of 2013, Dante Lucas, her boyfriend, was trying to convince Kelsey Schelling to come visit him in Pueblo that day. She responded with a firm no. It seems like they fought a lot that night. Just before 3 a.m., Kelsey texted Dante, "You don't have to be in a relationship with me. You don't have to marry me. You don't have to have a happy little family with me. You don't have an obligation to me. You're good. Don't worry. Good night." Lucas's response to that was, "Oh, I know all of that. Thanks for stating that for me."
So it was February 4th, and Kelsey had taken 3 home pregnancy tests. So she went into the doctor and had the doctor confirm to her that she was actually pregnant. She got the sonogram done. She even had the photo in hand of her sonogram. She was able to share that with her mom.
What did you think when you saw the baby?
I was happy. I knew that she was happy.
She showed up to work probably 10 minutes late. She just had her ultrasound. She was really excited. She was in a great mood that day.
That morning, Kelsey told Dante that she had finished her appointment and that her due date was September 13th. Lucas's response to that was cool. He asked her to skip work and come to Pueblo. She texted him, "I'm not going to come get you so we can fight all day." He texted back, "I don't want to fight at all. I want to give you this." She writes back, "Give me what?" He says, "Just wait and see for yourself. You probably wouldn't believe me if I told you anyway, so you can see for yourself."
Kelsey decides to go down to Pueblo after work.
She clocked out of work at a little bit after 8:40 p.m. and hit the road to see Dante in Pueblo.
So Denver to Pueblo drive right down I-25. It's about 2 hours long. It's just one straight path. Not a lot of people are out on the roads. It is a lonely, quiet drive. While she's driving down to Pueblo, Dante sends her a text saying, "Let's meet at the Southside Walmart." She parks her car there.
She texted him at 10:20 saying she'd arrived, and he replied that he'd be there shortly.
She's waiting, and she's getting impatient, like any girlfriend would.
At 11:10 p.m., he still hadn't shown up to the Walmart.
That's when Dante says, "Let's meet at our spot," which is in the neighborhood of his grandmother's home, and that's where Dante was staying at the time. She moved her car there from the Southside Walmart. She was just parked on the side of the road in this residential neighborhood. So then she's left waiting there again, and she's still impatiently texting him.
The last confirmed message from Kelsey was sent at 11:18 p.m. She was asking Dante, "Where are you? I've been here for over an hour just waiting."
The following day, the 5th, she didn't show up for work. So I tried calling her, couldn't get a response. So then I shot her a text message asking her where she was, why she wasn't at work. Got a text message back right away saying that she was in the hospital having some tests done. And she said that she was not having a baby anymore, it was growing in the wrong place.
I tried calling her on Wednesday. She didn't answer her phone, which is kind of pretty rare. And then I texted her, I said, "Hey, give me a call." I got a text message back, said, "I'm not feeling good, I'm on the couch, I'll call you tomorrow."
I kept trying to call, and she wouldn't answer. Toward the end of the week, it was going directly to voicemail. So then, in the back of my mind, I'm starting to get concerned.
After Kelsey had driven to Pueblo, there was never a phone call that was answered from her phone.
Kelsey is not the type of person who would, not talk to her friends. She was glued to her phone.
Friends and family would get text replies back, but they said that it came in a voice that just didn't quite sound like Kelsey. It was just short, quick responses.
Generally, any text message I had from Kelsey, words were spelled and there was punctuation, and they didn't have that.
I got to looking at the text message and it's like, man, I don't think that was her.
Why didn't you think that was her?
Just the verbiage in it and stuff. I mean, it just didn't seem like, you know, her texting me.
Then on that Saturday morning, it's like the whole world just unraveled. All of her friends like started contacting us saying, you know, we've been trying to reach Kelsey and we can't reach her. I called Doug, her dad, and said, you know, something is wrong. And so then we all drove up to Denver that day. Went into the apartment. There was no sign of her in the apartment. And that's when we called the Denver police.
Family members were visibly upset. They were frantic, actually, almost feverishly asking for any help they could get in trying to locate her.
Did you reach out to Dante?
I did contact him to ask him, you know, if he knew where she was.
What did he sound like on the phone? Because the call that you're making to him is, Kelsey, the woman that you are with, the mother of your child, is missing. We are desperate to find her.
Nothing, no. Not worked up, not, you know, just...
He's not scared? What can I do? How can I help?
No, he just says if I hear from her, I'll let you know. And then a little bit later, he got back with me. He said, I heard from Kelsey. She called from a private number. She said she doesn't have her phone. And she said she'll be getting a hold of you.
Intimating that she's alive, she's out there.
And I said, well, can you track that number? And he's like, yeah, I'll try and figure out what the number was. And then, of course, he never did.
When this case first came in, I called Dante. He was telling me that he had seen her and had talked with her and spent time with her more recently than any of her family members, any of her friends. After I got off the phone, I did have a sinking feeling in my stomach. The following Friday, February 15th, that morning is when we drove down to Pueblo to turn the investigation over to the Pueblo Police Department.
We, in the beginning, were trying not to call him a suspect, just to try to build a rapport with him and try to sit down and get him to open up.
Can you kind of tell me just briefly what happened?
Well, Tuesday morning, early Tuesday morning, she came down to Pueblo.
During the course of the interrogation with Dante Lucas, he reveals some pretty shocking things about Kelsey and about the baby.
To the mysterious disappearance of a Denver woman.
Pregnant woman who vanished. Kelsey was 8 weeks pregnant, last seen in Pueblo, visiting her boyfriend Dante Lucas.
So when do you start talking to Dante Lucas?
We start talking to him fairly quickly as far as what is going on.
Police bring Dante in for questioning, and immediately he denies a romantic relationship with Kelsey.
Now, is she your girlfriend, or
no? We never were actually in a relationship.
Can you kind of tell me just briefly what happened?
She came down to Pueblo, and we're talking whatever. You know, she ended up, getting mad at me or whatever.
Dante tells Officer Robinson that Kelsey slept in her car in Pueblo.
He said that they met up again the following morning and that he brought Kelsey Schelling to Parkview Medical Center, where she went inside.
So, went to Parkview. And she went in and stayed for about almost 2 hours, hour 45 too.
We have no record of Kelsey Schelling ever being here at Parkview Medical Center.
Now, what do you check to find out if she was here or not?
We have a medical records system that keeps track of every patient that's ever walked through our doors.
So for you, there was no way she's ever here?
That's correct.
He alluded to the fact that she may have had a miscarriage.
She came out and she told me that she wasn't pregnant.
Just the day before in Denver, Kelsey's doctor told her that the baby was healthy.
So then after we left Parkview,
Dante claimed that he and Kelsey then went to the Southside Walmart. Kelsey was going to grab some snacks before she made the drive back to Denver.
She went to go get some snacks, like something to eat, because she was hungry. And then came back out, we ended up talking, and she ended up telling me, like, get out of the car at Walmart, and she didn't want to take me home. So I just left from Walmart, started walking home, and then my mom came and got me.
But surveillance video from Walmart reveals a different version of events.
He contends that the two of them are together, and clearly, based on the surveillance, it's one person. It's him getting out of the car, and no one else exits.
When the car was parked at Walmart on February 5th, police believe that it was Dante Lucas parking that car, getting out and walking away. They have pretty good surveillance video showing it.
The car sat there overnight.
The morning of February 6th, this unknown man is seen walking to Kelsey Schelling's car, parked at the Southside Walmart, and is seen driving away with the car. We have no idea who that person was in that video.
It's a car that that person is familiar with, and we know earlier that Dante had the key.
Who do you think that someone was that came back and drove that car away?
You know, there's similarities to Dante, but it's nothing that we can 100% say that is the person who drove it away.
When Dante Lucas talked with police, he didn't paint the best picture of Kelsey. He painted a picture of, just that she was kind of troubled.
She had bad anxiety, she has anxiety attacks, so she had pills for that.
What can you tell me about that?
She's told me before that she's ended up in the hospital a few times from overdosing, I guess.
Dante cast her to police as someone who had troubles with drugs. No?
I don't believe that, no.
She just one time she told me about the suicide, but she told me she ended up in the hospital behind it multiple times.
When she was 15 years old, she did. So yes, she has had that in her past. But if she committed suicide, you would find her body. I mean, she was happy. She wanted that baby. She wanted to be a mom.
So at this point, Kelsey has been missing for more than a week. But on Valentine's Day, February 14th, 2013, her car is discovered.
The car of a missing Denver woman has been found in Pueblo.
Detectives will be examining Kelsey's car.
It was big news when Kelsey's car was found at St. Mary Corwin Medical Center. How did it get there? What happened to Kelsey?
I knew once her car was found that something horrible had happened, because there's just no way that she would have gone somewhere and left her car.
To find the car and no Kelsey.
And no Kelsey. We did not have any good security footage that could tell us who dropped off the car, how the car got there. Normally, if someone was going to go away for a few days, they take their car with them. So we are now leaning towards foul play. So we accelerate the case.
Police start working backwards. They start going through surveillance video, and what they find is pretty surprising. Less than 12 hours after she would have arrived in Pueblo, surveillance video shows Dante in her car at an ATM in Pueblo. He's driving and he takes $400 out of Kelsey's bank account.
But is it suspicious for you that he uses that card after the date where you pinpoint Kelsey was missing?
It is part of the suspicious activity, yes.
Because Dante withdraws money from Kelsey's account without her in the car, Dante is brought in for a second time by Pueblo police.
This is the second time I talked to you. Mm-hmm.
These detectives had a wealth of information to go at him.
Why'd you get the money?
The money? Mm-hmm. What money?
11:39 at the bank. You're on video, dude. In her car with her credit card. You're on tape.
This is the 400 that you're talking about?
Mm-hmm.
This is for my phone bill.
Why didn't she go with you to the ATM? It's not in the car. It's on the video.
It may have been while she was over the hospital. I'm not sure about like I said, my time frame has been messed up.
The detective moves on to another topic, talking about why there's no record of Kelsey ever showing up at the hospital.
There's no record of her ever being at Parkview.
That's like all I have to say.
Now here's the thing. Instead of pressing Dante on these contradictions, they move on to an unrelated topic.
When you dropped her off, she dropped you off at Walmart, where were you parked at? I mean, apparently you guys know, so, I don't understand why you, I told him one time, that's all I can say about it.
When she dropped you off, when was that again?
Can I speak to a lawyer, please? So if you guys just keep asking the same questions over and over, I was like to speak to a lawyer.
Once he requests a lawyer, all questions come to a halt.
Unfortunately, this is a very poorly executed interview. I think it's a tremendous missed opportunity.
Once he shut down, our avenues of trying to talk to him end.
How did you read that?
As the possibility that he knows something.
Dante Lucas was arrested on February 15th. They don't arrest him on murder charges. He was arrested on felony identity theft charges for using Kelsey's debit card at the bank that day.
But those charges were later dropped when investigators found out that Kelsey did, on occasion, give him permission to use her bank card.
How do you prove she did not or did give him permission at that time? And since you had permission to do it before, it makes it a very difficult case to prosecute.
He's released. He's, living his life.
Do we suspect foul play? Yes. Have we come up with a body? No. Dante is a person of interest in the fact that she's missing.
Hoping to get Dante to talk, police bring in the person who knows him better than anyone.
Mysterious disappearance.
Keep us up at night. This was a story that I spent 4 years working on and reporting on.
5 years of no answers.
I wanted so badly for there to be justice in this case.
Even though Kelsey's car was found in Pueblo, Kelsey hadn't been found. Police, maintained at that time that it was a missing persons case.
When the charges of identity theft are dropped in March of 2013, police can't get Dante to talk again.
You'll have a chair right there. I'll grab you water and we'll be there in a second.
So they take a different tact. They decide to speak to his mother, Sarah Lucas.
I would love to clear Dante and move on. If Dante would come in, do a polygraph, we ask him like 5 questions. If he passes that, we can move on and look other directions.
I will relay that to his lawyer, and I know my son wants nothing more than to find out what happened to her.
Detectives ask her about February 5th. That's the day that Dante was seen on surveillance camera parking Kelsey's car at Walmart.
Did you in fact pick Dante up?
I did pick my son up.
At that time, did you see Kelsey? Was she with him, or?
No, she wasn't with him then.
Do you know where she was?
Yes.
Sarah gives Dante an alibi for his whereabouts on February 6th, when that unknown man is seen moving Kelsey's car from the Walmart.
On the 6th, Dante, or somebody that looks remarkably similar to Dante, I'm not going to say 100% was him, but went back and picked it up.
There's no way that was him. There's no way he was at home. I know my son. He's not capable of hurting anybody.
But it's been 3 years since this case happened. No one's been charged.
That's right. You have inconsistencies, lies, but without a body or any direct evidence that tells us something happened to her, to a homicide, it may happen one day, but right now it's, we haven't had any evidence to reclassify it.
You look at the Pueblo Police Department, they probably didn't have as many resources, and her family quickly became frustrated with how this investigation was progressing, or kind of the lack thereof any progress.
Kelsey's still not a victim, according to them. There's not been a criminal act committed, according to them. We just want an effective investigation done into Kelsey's disappearance.
Her family is pleading for your help.
We're doing everything in our power to find our missing loved one.
We tried to push Pueblo police for answers. We were there for every press conference, every event. We just weren't getting any new information from them at all. And to me, that was so frustrating.
The investigation really isn't being handled properly.
Laura Saxton, always been a fierce advocate for her daughter. and I don't think she'll rest until Kelsey is found.
Many in Pueblo are not giving up on finding clues that could help find Kelsey Schelling.
Why do you think people feel so strongly about Kelsey's case?
You know, they can't believe it. You know, they try and imagine what if it was their child.
We're going to break up again over here.
In May of that year when she went missing, they started doing their own searches. They didn't think police were looking hard enough.
The whole community was rallying. There were so many searches for her body all over the city of Pueblo.
This is probably one of the largest groups we've had in a while. After 3 years, that means a lot, so thank you.
Come on, kid.
People were scattering, just looking for any shred of evidence.
It's becoming harder to come back. I dread the trips, but I know I have to do it.
She comes home empty-handed. The one thing that she doesn't have is Kelsey.
They never found anything on those searches. Then those searches turned into anniversaries.
Kelsey Schelling disappeared 4 years ago this month.
And Kelsey's mother believes police are now closer than ever to finding her.
That turned into justice walks.
What do we want? Justice!
Around the Pueblo Police Department and the District Attorney's Office.
We appreciate you all so much. Your support keeps us going.
To put pressure on our system to do something here.
We're going to keep going. We're going to keep coming up with ideas. I mean, we're trying everything.
Kelsey's family offers a $50,000 reward for information. So you feel like you're doing everything you can, even to this day, to find out what happened with Kelsey?
Yes. There is no lead we don't follow up. We followed up leads from psychics that call in. Well, they've had a vision on where Kelsey is, and we followed up those leads.
In an effort to get some more information, hopefully some tips and leads in the case, Kelsey's family also set up a Facebook page, Help Find Kelsey.
It was one source or one place where people could come together to generate information, maybe from even people that didn't want to call police.
You get a Facebook message.
It was from a woman saying, if I have information about Kelsey, can I remain anonymous? It's so awful. He sold her into sex trafficking. I almost feel like I went insane. What if she is still out there somewhere?
We were on the ground to investigate, and I couldn't believe what happened.
Right when they're at the trunk, get ready. It's Ryan Smith, ABC News.
The car sat there overnight.
This unknown man is seen walking to Kelsey Schelling's car and is seen driving away with the car.
And Kelsey's just gone.
Kelsey had taken 3 home pregnancy tests.
Now, is she your girlfriend or no? We never were actually in a relationship.
The lead suspect stops talking.
Can I speak to a lawyer, please?
It's a dead end.
These are the stories that keep us up at night.
But an undercover volunteer befriends him.
I had to play the role that I didn't know what was happening, so I was like, oh my gosh, what's going on? Like, what is happening?
Okay, they're both rolling now.
There's a sting operation.
Right when they're at the trunk, get ready. We're about 10 seconds away. Marcus Ryan Smith, ABC News. How you doing?
I know that my testimony could potentially help take him down.
The anxiety level was high, the tension was high.
A witness in the Dante Lucas trial
was found shot to death.
Another moment where your jaw hit the floor.
When they came and told us the verdict was in, we all were just like, oh my God.
Her mother simply won't give up on finding Kelsey. For nearly 2 years, Laura Saxton had been on a desperate search for answers about her daughter Kelsey, who suddenly disappeared in February of 2013.
There will be a renewed search for clues in the case of Kelsey Schelling.
Just through seeing Laura Saxton, the tears, the sadness, the frustration,
it all came, rolling out.
Many in Pueblo are not giving up on finding clues that could help find Kelsey Schelling.
The relentlessness of this mother's search really struck a chord with so many people in Pueblo. Scores of locals turned out to help Laura search all around the Pueblo area for any trace of Kelsey.
Over here on this other hike in 2 more groups.
The ride home is always really tough, going home empty-handed, emotionally and physically.
Is it hard to keep hope?
As far as the hope of actually finding her, that dwindles, every day.
But then, in October of 2015, nearly 2 years after Kelsey's disappearance, there's a shocking development. A mysterious message giving Laura hope comes through the Help Find Kelsey Facebook page. That's the page that Laura had set up to gather tips and leads on the case.
It was saying, if I have information about Kelsey, can I remain anonymous?
When Laura responds, a man emails her saying, "Ma'am, please, your daughter is not dead. She will be back home alive." The man offers a harrowing account of what really happened to Kelsey. He claims that Dante hired a friend to kill her and says Dante has no idea she is alive. He thinks she is dead.
And that the friend did not kill her. He sold her into sex trafficking. It made me sick. I mean, I could barely function. What if she is still out there somewhere?
The emailer says he needs money to help Kelsey escape. $50,000 in cash. So the plan is this. The money is to be brought to Vancouver, Washington, specifically to a local McDonald's restaurant. Then it's to be hand-delivered to a guy named Marcus, who would be wearing a red hat.
Once the money was exchanged, then this courier person would go and get Kelsey and bring her back to the McDonald's. I will have to sell some stocks, which will take about a week, but I can push to expedite that process. I just thought, what if she's been out there and I could have found her and we haven't? I mean, it was just what if?
Laura sets up the meeting at the McDonald's in Vancouver to deliver the cash. But even though she's desperate for answers, she's worried that something criminal is going on. So she reaches out to the Vancouver police and asks them to go undercover to meet this courier.
It felt like law enforcement from Vancouver should have been involved in the situation.
But just before the appointed time, the Vancouver police back out, believing it to be an internet scam and not an actual human trafficking plot. But 2020 had the McDonald's under surveillance to see if anyone would show up. Our cameras are rolling as a man with a red hat comes in.
That's him.
He sits quietly. But after no one shows up, he takes off.
Okay, he's on move. Cut the engine.
Weird, eerie to see that they actually were, going through with this.
He's gone.
It was just all a matter of trying to get down to the truth of this.
As I was investigating this mysterious email, a contact of mine told me about another missing woman's case that proved to be the key to unraveling this mystery. In Portsmouth, Ohio, 1,200 miles away from Colorado, Megan Lancaster, 25 years old, has also suddenly disappeared.
Katie Lancaster is on a mission to help find her sister-in-law.
I mean, she's gone without a trace. We have her car and her wallet.
An eerie feeling like there's something, like we're gonna find something.
Months go by with no developments. Megan's family organizes searches and sets up a Facebook page to publicize the case.
And then, out of nowhere, he pops up.
A startling message comes through the family's Facebook page about Megan.
He says, I know where Megan is, and I can get her back.
Just like with Kelsey's family, the emailer says he can help Megan escape, but he needs money, $50,000. He directs them to bring $25,000 in cash up front to Vancouver, Washington, specifically to that same McDonald's, and deliver it to a man named Marcus, wearing, no surprise, a red hat.
What if he really does have her, and I can bring her home?
You should stick with the crew, behind the camera, with the crew.
To unravel just what's going on with this mystery, Katie agreed to work with 2020 to set up a sting operation.
Katie and I are going to be in one vehicle.
Just like Laura did 2 weeks earlier, she arranges a meeting to drop off the money in Vancouver at that McDonald's.
There are booths over here.
Katie, you said this morning that they sent you a text message.
They will be sending Marcus.
Okay, they're both rolling now.
I would be going to this rendezvous with Katie, but wearing a hidden camera. As we walk into the McDonald's at the appointed meet time, we quickly spot Marcus, the man in the red hat, and walk over to him. Katie was instructed not to ask any questions, so I told Marcus, hey, the money is in the trunk of a car parked outside.
Right when they're at the trunk, get ready. We're about 10 seconds away.
Meanwhile, I was waiting outside with our camera team and a security guard in case this thing went sideways.
Okay, let's get ready.
As they head out to the parking lot, before the trunk is opened, I walk over to Marcus. I want to get some answers.
Marcus, Ryan Smith, ABC News. How you doing?
Pretty good.
Good. Why'd you come here to take $25,000 from Katie?
I don't know.
You don't know why you're here to take $25,000 from Katie?
Nope.
What are you here for?
Oh, to collect some money.
You see, Marcus claims he was suckered too, lured online into a supposed jewelry venture. He says he was supposed to pick up the money and then wire it to someone he's never met.
So a random guy tells you to go to a McDonald's twice in less than 2 weeks to meet people to pick up money, and you don't think anything of it?
I didn't think none of it.
We were told that you were going to deliver Megan to Katie today. Is that true?
I have no idea about no Megan or no kidnapping or anything like that.
This would be a scheme to extort money from families who have family members that are missing.
I didn't know nothing of this. I had no clue anybody was supposed to be exchanging nothing for a human being. If I did know, I would not have been involved in this situation.
So you've been here twice, coming to pick up money at a McDonald's. Your name is attached to this.
Just feel shaky inside.
I had no clue.
It's important that you be real honest with me.
Yeah, I'm real honest.
You have never heard of Kelsey Schelling?
Never.
Definitely a big scam. I want to know who's behind it.
But an FBI analysis of the emailer's Facebook page showed it used an IP address traced all the way to Russia.
In most scams, they're compartmentalized. So the person you may send to pick up the cash at a particular location may know nothing about what the scam is.
Then that's just 100% clarification that, you know, this is some dirtbags out there, you know, trying to get money off of these poor families.
But while the extortion plot that was torturing Laura was laid to rest, the roller coaster ride wasn't over. A sympathetic stranger who feels for Laura comes up with a shocking plan to go undercover on her own and befriend Dante to try to find the truth about what happened to Kelsey.
I knew that I was potentially putting myself into danger.
Dante Lucas?
And when we go to get some answers from Dante, she was right there with him.
What do you have to say to her family?
Even though Laura Saxton lives hundreds of miles away from Pueblo, Colorado, the news about her years-long crusade to find her missing daughter continued to resonate with folks living there.
Our top story tonight, the search for Kelsey Schelling. Today, law enforcement following new leads in the case.
We're going to keep coming up with ideas. I mean, we're trying everything.
I felt really heartbroken for her. As a mom, I couldn't even begin to fathom knowing that your child's out there.
It's spring of 2016 when Lauren Shore, a single mom living near Pueblo, says Laura's story inspired her to hatch an audacious plan of her own. Make Facebook friends with Dante Lucas, gain his trust, and meet up with him in real life, and just maybe help solve the mystery of what happened to Kelsey.
Definitely was nerve-wracking, but I felt like I could do it. So I messaged him on Facebook, and I told him that I was looking to meet new friends. He responded fairly quickly, within, I say, a couple of hours.
Lauren was eventually able to get Dante to meet her in person. When we shot this footage of Dante playing basketball in 2016, Lauren was there with him. She says it was only the second time they'd ever met.
We had went to a basketball court to just play around, shoot some hoops, and that's when a man with a camera came up to us.
Dante Lucas, I'm with ABC News 2020. The family of Kelsey says you're responsible for her disappearance. Is that true?
Who's Kelsey? I freaked out. I had to play the role that I didn't know what was happening, so I was like, oh my gosh, what's going on? Like, what is happening?
What's happening right now?
And he kind of just shut down and was like, I'll tell you about it later on. Don't freak out. It's okay. None of this is true.
As the weeks go by, Lauren says she's able to develop a close relationship with Dante.
We'd just hang around the family, watch movies, drink a little bit. He always smelt of alcohol. He comes off as very cocky, I feel like. He feels like he's just the man, and he can't do no wrong.
Just as she'd planned, Lauren says she got Dante to open up, to trust her enough. The time finally seemed right to ask him about Kelsey.
There was only a certain amount of period of time that he would talk about it. 1 minute he had no involvement, he had nothing to do with it, and then he would just shut down and start crying hysterically and get really upset.
But Lauren says something very unexpected happened with Dante. Her undercover relationship with him blossomed into romance.
I felt like he did genuinely develop feelings for me and did genuinely fall in love with me. He has this way about him that makes you just feel so sorry for him. In the back of my mind, I always kept that he is potentially a murderer.
Lauren says her relationship with Dante continued for about a year. But then something happened. There was an incident outside his house that made her realize she was in way over her head.
He's like, I want you to marry me. And he showed me the ring. I took the ring. At that point, I was kind of like done, because I didn't want to get in any deeper than I had already gotten into.
Despite all the efforts of this clandestine girlfriend, her work doesn't seem to be paying off, and the clock just keeps ticking for Laura Saxton. She's not any closer to knowing the truth about what happened to Kelsey.
I wasn't happy at all with how things were going, and I mean, that's one big reason why I wanted to do the first story with you guys. Was I was hoping that that would somehow bring something out into the light.
Tonight on 2020, when do you stop looking for a pregnant daughter who's vanished?
In May of 2016, our first 2020 program on the Kelsey Schelling case hits the airwaves. The very day of our broadcast, there's a big announcement regarding the investigation into Kelsey's disappearance. The Colorado Bureau of Investigation was going to join the case.
That was news to me, so I was kind of like, oh my God, this is awesome.
I think once that 2020 special aired, it really turned up the heat on Pueblo police and on this case.
Taking over the case, Pueblo Police Department Commander Eric Bravo and CBI agent Kevin Torres. Working together, they moved fast, turning it from a missing persons case into a full-blown criminal investigation.
It was a homicide investigation in our eyes, so I immediately started working on setting a plan into motion how we wanted to proceed.
Police got a tip that led them to believe Schelling's body might be in Dante's backyard.
It's not long before police dig up the yard of the house where Dante and his family had been staying.
So we thought, man, we really have something. But it went from elation to satisfaction. That day it just seemed like we were there, and then it slipped away.
During the investigation, Agent Torres finds out about Dante's relationship with Lawrence Shore. When he interviews Shore, she reveals that Dante had made a key admission to her about Kelsey's disappearance. And it's about that Walmart surveillance video of the mystery man walking over to her car and then driving off with it.
She confirmed for us Dante admitting it was him in the Walmart surveillance video. She also informed us that Dante admitted to her dropping Kelsey's car off at St. Mary Corwin Hospital. The piece of information that Lauren provided to us was a pretty crucial piece at that point.
Then, in late 2017, there's a huge development that will totally transform the case. A Pueblo man tells police that Dante and other family members had attacked him in front of their home and stolen $1,000 from him. Now that gives police a reason to arrest Dante.
I had information that Dante was leaving Pueblo and was heading to DIA, where he seemingly intended to board a flight to Tucson. And the concern was that he may take other efforts to meet friends in Mexico.
Boy, the anxiety level was high, the tension was high.
The time was ticking away, and the tires were turning on the road. And Dante was within 20 minutes of getting on a plane for Tucson, Arizona, when he was arrested.
When he was arrested, there was hope across the community that maybe investigators would finally get some answers in this case.
We decided that the next day would be the day that we would send a couple detectives back in to try and answer some of the questions that we didn't have answered.
During his interrogation, Dante finally breaks down and comes clean, confirming Lauren Shore's account that he was the one seen in that Walmart video.
So that information that he confirmed that that was him was huge.
You see, it was that admission, combined with the wealth of evidence from text messages, cell phone records, and surveillance video already gathered, all of that was enough for prosecutors to move forward.
At the end of the day, I said, I think we have enough here to go forward. I ethically believe that Dante Lucas killed Kelsey Schilling, and I think we have the evidence to prove it.
A major development, the ex-boyfriend of a pregnant Denver woman who went missing 4 years ago. He now faces charges of first-degree murder.
How are you thinking as his trial approached? Are you thinking justice will be done?
I put a lot of things on hold because I just was, sure it was going to happen and, wanted to be ready to go.
So after 8 years, Dante Lucas is finally in court, and the prosecution has a surprise witness.
That just took the whole room's breath away. No one saw that coming. This story became such a big deal here in Pueblo because people want answers and they haven't gotten any for 8 years.
Dante Lucas, the Pueblo man accused of murdering his pregnant ex-girlfriend Kelsey Schilling nearly 8 years ago, is headed to trial tomorrow.
Did I think it was going to be a tough case? Absolutely. And we well may not win it. But I owe it to the family. I think I owe it to Kelsey to go forward and try this case.
KRDO News Channel 13's Dan Beatty has been following this case and the trial for more than 2 years.
I was anticipating there to just be a mad rush of reporters who were going to try to get into the courtroom. I was very worried that I might not even get a seat. You could feel the anticipation. When I saw Laura Saxton walk into the judicial building, you could tell this was a day she's been waiting for a long time.
Denver 7's Liz Gilardi in Pueblo today for opening statements. Liz, you have been with this case every step of the way now for all these years.
The prosecution simply started out and they said, this is not a missing persons case, this is a homicide case.
The case that the prosecution was making right off the jump was, one, they were going to prove through text messages and surveillance video that Dante Lucas has to be the one responsible for Kelsey Schilling's death.
These were two people in a relationship. Kelsey Schilling became pregnant. Dante Lucas didn't want to have a baby. And he made sure that didn't happen.
I know that she had mentioned Kelsey Schilling's Chevy Cruze.
The prosecution said this car tells a story, and they told the jurors that you will see Dante Lucas moving this car around Pueblo in the days after she went missing.
The idea that someone can essentially disappear without a trace, I think, is kind of a counterintuitive thought for people to have.
Prosecutors think there's enough evidence to convict Lucas even without a body, but the defense disagrees.
In the opening statements, the defense said this is a missing persons case. This has always been a missing persons case. They said there's no body, there's no evidence. Why should you believe that Dante Lucas killed her?
They do not have a crime scene. They do not have a murder weapon.
Today, the jury got a detailed look at some of the text messages exchanged between them.
For the prosecutors, their goal was to show that those text messages showed intent, showed that Dante Lucas consistently lied, not only to investigators, but to Laura Saxton herself.
What they refer to as his luring of Kelsey Schilling to Pueblo.
The prosecution say that he lured her there to end her life.
We know that that's his phone. He admitted to those text messages. We know that that's his thoughts and feelings about it. That's direct evidence.
And the movements of their phones as well, as they were pinging off cell phone towers in Pueblo on the night of February 4th and the early morning hours of February 5th. I think that a lot of the case really centered around those movements.
Two pivotal witnesses testified in the high-profile Pueblo murder case against Dante Lucas.
First witness was Laura Saxton, and we were not expecting Laura Saxton to be the first one to take the stand. She didn't break down, but you can tell she's hurting. There's a lot of pain behind her voice.
I think that was really powerful for the jury to see. Her mom spoke to the fact that she absolutely wanted this baby.
Prosecutors today painted Kelsey Schelling as an excited mother-to-be, desperate to make it work with her boyfriend.
It didn't take long for the prosecutors to swing for the fences, calling some pretty shocking witnesses to the stand.
Ryan Rivera is a former Pueblo County inmate who considered himself to be a friend of Dante Lewis.
And when he took the stand, he said that Dante Lucas told him that they're never going to find Kelsey Schelling's body. That just took the whole room's breath away.
Ryan Rivera, he was the only person who came forward over the duration of this trial that really said, Dante told me he did this.
I wasn't in the courtroom, but well, jailhouse snitch on its face is just not credible. I mean, that's the assumption that we believe jurors have, and it's the assumption we have as defense lawyers. Why would this person do it? What's the benefit? What's the motive?
There was no deals made about charges he would get to plead to, time he would get to serve. There was no deals like that.
There were a lot of names on the prosecutor's list that I was shocked by, but Sarah Lucas certainly topped that list.
When you saw that Sarah Lucas was on the prosecution side, everyone wondered, what is she going to say?
The one important thing that I've kind of mentioned, she confirmed, that Dante was the last person left alone with Kelsey.
The prosecution painted a picture of a troubled relationship.
Some of Kelsey's close friends testified. They pointed toward elements of domestic abuse in Kelsey and Dante's relationship.
Something worth pointing out was the prosecution and even the defense made it clear that Dante was using Kelsey for a number of things. For her money, Dante used Kelsey for her apartment in Denver, and Dante used Kelsey for her car. And his argument was, she lets me do it. The defense pushed the narrative that Kelsey Schelling popped pills, was an addict, that Kelsey, when she left Dante Lucas at the Southside Walmart here in Pueblo, that she was going to meet up with a drug dealer.
There's no single person, other than the defendant in 2017, who's saying that she was into drugs and that she was a party girl.
You didn't have the forensic evidence. It seemed like you were really relying on circumstantial evidence and the evidence of snitches and these other witnesses. That's pretty straightforward. Either you believe them or you don't.
The witness list yields more surprises. The ones who make it to court.
I know that my testimony could potentially help take him down.
And the ones who didn't.
Witness 31-year-old Roxanne Martinez was found shot to death.
That was a completely unforeseen development in this case.
Breaking on Denver 7, a key witness in the Kelsey Schelling murder trial found dead.
That witness, 31-year-old Roxanne Martinez, was found shot to death in Denver last week.
These are still very stunning developments.
Roxanne Martinez, a witness for the prosecution, was set to testify soon.
That was just an absolutely, completely unforeseen development in this case. People were reeling when that news broke.
Denver police officers were called to a residential area in southeast Denver on a report of an unresponsive female who was lying in the roadway. We determined that that individual had been shot one time and died from that injury.
Her dad is in shock, her mom, her stepmom. It's just tragic all the way around.
I think when a witness in any major case turns up dead directly before they're set to testify, I think, of course, people are going to think, was she killed because she was going to testify?
Denver police arrested a suspect in Martinez's killing, 29-year-old Emmanuel Chandler. Chandler has been charged with first-degree murder, but he hasn't entered a plea yet.
We don't have any connection between Mr. Chandler and Mr. Lucas or anybody associated with that trial.
Our concern was to make sure that people understood that while she was an endorsed witness, I couldn't comment on her testimony.
Nobody knows what Roxanne Martinez was going to say on the stand for sure, with the exception of maybe the investigators who talked to her.
But while prosecutors say they can't discuss what Roxanne Martinez would have said on the stand, 2020 has uncovered some revealing details about her. You see, back in March of 2016, a woman named Roxanne had reached out to Laura Saxton through that Help Find Kelsey Facebook page. Roxanne messaged that she used to date the guy Kelsey was pregnant with, and he told me what had happened and started crying.
I'm instantly like mixed emotions, like, okay, are you going for the reward, or, you know, are you for real?
When Laura asked, "Do you know where Kelsey is located?" Roxanne replied, "He told me everything. Yes, I do."
Basically, her information sounded very good and very promising, and so we really wanted to meet with her.
This mysterious woman agreed to meet Laura and her husband at a Mexican restaurant in Denver.
We were actually on our way there, and I tried to reach her by phone to let her know we were coming. She said that she was in the hospital and couldn't meet us. That was kind of the extent of what I really remember. And then, you know, past that, then, you know, that was all turned over to law enforcement to look into further.
Authorities say that woman was the same Roxanne who was killed during the trial.
I can confirm that CBI followed up and interviewed her, that we did have her as an endorsed witness that we wanted to testify during trial. The thing that I'm steering clear from is I just don't want to talk about evidence that wasn't actually admitted during trial.
Martinez's killing shakes up the trial and threatens to overshadow the testimony of another prosecution witness who had a remarkable story to tell. It's none other than Lauren Shore, that woman who befriended Dante as part of a plan to try to find out what happened to Kelsey.
I know that my testimony could potentially help take him down, and that was realistically why I wanted to testify.
Shore testifies about Dante's critical admission to her, that he was the mysterious figure seen picking up Kelsey's car after it sat overnight in a Walmart parking lot.
I said, so that must have meant that you had dropped the car off at the hospital, correct? And that's when he said, yes, that was him that dropped the car off.
When the defense cross-examines Shore, they attack her credibility and her motives, at one point characterizing her as a sex informant because she had a physical relationship with Dante.
It's fair game, and if you're going to put yourself out there like she did and sleep with someone, the jury ought to know about that. You're having intimate conversations, and that casts a lot of suspicion on her as a witness.
The sex informant part really bothered me because I wasn't having sex with Dante to get answers out of him. I was playing my part and role as girlfriend. So to me, to be called such was really degrading.
On the very last day of its case, the prosecution played an interrogation video of Dante confirming Shore's account.
The clip that I played at the beginning of my closing was his phrase to detectives, "I lied from the jump. I moved the car." I wanted the jury to hear the defendant in his own words say, "I lied."
When it's the defense's turn to present its case, they raise a lot of eyebrows in court.
The defense didn't call a single witness to the stand. The defense immediately rested their case. And it was just another moment where your jaw hit the floor.
The burden of proof is on the government. It's simply messaging in a very strong way to the jury, they haven't done it. It's not guilty. So it's a strong message.
There was just really not a lot of hard forensic evidence to go off of. So as far as, you know, what evidence they put forth to court that was irrefutable, that Dante Lucas killed Kelsey Schelling, I never saw that.
After a shocking final day of the trial, the jury was going to deliberate, and I had no idea what was going to happen at that point.
I think everybody was just like holding their breath.
Prosecution and defense have given closing arguments. The jury is now deliberating.
Well, on that last day of the trial, no one expected to get a verdict that day.
So now the waiting begins.
Yes. And I was prepared to camp out at the courthouse as long as I had to. I really thought I would be there all week, and we're really totally unprepared for when they came and told us the verdict was in. I think we all were just like, oh my God.
I mean, it was shocking how quickly they arrived at their decision, especially given just the amount of information they had to look at.
I can tell you, because the decision came back so early, all of our experience as prosecutors is that this was probably an acquittal, because juries tend to come to decisions more quickly on acquittals than convictions.
It was like standing on the precipice of a cliff and looking down. It was scary.
It was a very tense atmosphere in the courthouse while everyone was waiting to hear what the verdict was.
Even I was nervous, and I'm not affiliated with Kelsey Schelling's family at all.
People were wondering, does that mean Dante Lucas is going to walk?
I think everybody was just like holding their breath almost.
And then, when you hear the verdict, tell me how you're feeling.
Well, the words came out way too slow. Like, I feel like the judge was talking in slow-mo, even though he wasn't. I mean, I was just like, every word, it's like, okay, spit it out, please. And then he finally got to, guilty of first degree, and I think that was the first breath, like, I had taken in a long time.
This is a guilty verdict 8 years in the making, and even though Kelsey Schelling's body has never been found, the jury clearly felt there was
prison without parole.
It was just so emotional for everybody, for both sides. It's a sad story. It's a sad situation that didn't have to end up like this if he had just let her come home.
You mentioned it was a lot of emotions for both sides. Did you find yourself looking over at their side?
Dante was sitting right in front of me. I looked at the back of his head through the whole trial. But, the mother of his child was there, and she broke down, and honestly, my heart hurt for her, hurt for their child, because it didn't have to end up this way.
Ryan Rivera's testimony was the biggest bombshell for our trial. It had moved us all. I could hear the gasps even in the masks of fellow jurors.
When it came out that he was convicted, I think there was a great feeling of not elation. You have to look at it from this side too. Mr. Lucas is a young man, and he was convicted of a criminal crime that shapes his life for however long he lives. I think it's every parent's worst nightmare that a child goes before you, and you can never fully heal that wound. I can tell you, I almost lost a child in the early 80s, and so I had a lot of sympathy with Laura and her family, because I came that close to that tragedy. And that child was the lead prosecutor on this case.
So the elected DA is my dad, and Kyle McCarthy, who was obviously on the case with me, is my husband. And I don't think, had a night in the last 4 years that we haven't gone home and talked about Kelsey Schelling. Sometimes it's the first thing we talk about when we wake up. Sometimes it's the last thing we talk about before we go to sleep.
On Saturdays when we're driving kids around to soccer, a lot of times we're being told to stop talking about it because they can hear us in the front seat talking about it.
We both also had, an incredible emotional pull to the family. That is a very special relationship, one that I will value for the rest of my life.
Well, I think, Michelle and Kyle with their closing, they're amazing. I don't even know what other words to use.
The first things that she told the reporters outside of the courthouse after the guilty verdict, yes, she was happy, but She was still devastated.
So we're very, very thankful for this outcome. But in the end, I didn't get Kelsey back. And that's what I wanted more than anything. So I feel like I didn't do something, I didn't push hard enough on something, or I didn't look enough on something to bring her home.
That devastation isn't going anywhere. Like she said, she has to live with that forever.
Her goal throughout all of this was to bring Kelsey home, give her a proper burial. So I know she had expressed that in some ways she felt like she had failed in her main mission.
I think the investigative team has some ideas where she may rest.
If that's where she is, that's just like the worst possibility to me.
That very first day that we met in September of 2016. I'll never forget it like it was yesterday, and it was just a special bond that we formed.
Kelsey's mom just battled and battled and battled.
8 years, I was hoping that it would never take this long. I grabbed my mother very tight and held her very close, holding on to my dad's hands.
Since the trial's over, it's because And Kelsey still hasn't been found, so that I've just felt very empty this past week.
It doesn't feel final because we still don't know where Kelsey is, and we still don't know exactly what happened.
It turns out that prosecutors did present troubling evidence from the night Kelsey disappeared. That evidence provided a possible explanation to where her body could be.
We received information from the Pueblo landfill that there was some video evidence of a vehicle being there. You couldn't see what kind of vehicle. You couldn't tell who was in the car. Their lock to their front gate into the dump had been tampered with.
Well, it caught my attention when I grabbed the lock on my hand, and I said, well, somebody tried to get in here overnight.
The cell phone records, the pings were all out in that area. So, we suspected that's what happened.
If you heard the testimony of the landfill expert, it would be next to impossible to just find a body just by conducting a search of the landfill.
Who wants that for their child to be the final resting place? No one.
We want to bring her justice and bring her home with us, her and Kadri both. Kadri, that was the name that she was going to give the child.
I'm never going to recover without getting her back, and so I still have nowhere to go to take her flowers, to go sit and talk with her, take her balloons on her birthday, go to see her on the holidays.
Hi, Dad. Hi, Coco Bean.
How do you want her to be remembered?
A little girl with a really big heart, a really big smile, a really big laugh, beautiful eyes, silly. She was so silly. I miss being silly with her. I miss all the things that we didn't get to do together.
A generous soul. She was a very giving person and a very sharing person who helped neighbors in need.
When they needed extra money for baby food or diapers, Janora was always there.
Is found brutally murdered.
This homicide was one of the most violent homicides that I've worked.
There was blood from basically the floor to the ceiling.
It was something that shocked the community. Police uncover a sinister trail of deception and hate.
He had some strange tendencies. He seemed to be stalking her.
The polygraph came back with some clear signs that he was being deceptive.
To unveil a killer no one expected.
He made her believe that he was her knight in shining armor, so she never saw it coming.
He had two completely different faces on him. He was just the devil incarnate.
One hot summer morning in the sleepy rural town of Clinton, Louisiana, the sheriff's office gets a call that sends them to a farmhouse just outside of town. It belongs to a woman named Genora Guillory.
When Genora didn't show up for work on Monday morning, her coworkers started to get nervous. They called her cell phone, she didn't answer. They called her landline, and it was busy, stayed busy. At that point, a friend at work called the sheriff's office in East Feliciana and said, "Would you please go check on our coworker, Genora Guillory?"
The deputy that worked for the East Feliciana Sheriff's Office, and he went to the residence to look for her. The door was unlocked. And he discovered the body.
He backed out of the house, and he said he threw up outside. He could barely even speak to the dispatcher. He was so upset by what he found.
Detectives are called to the scene.
You could tell something had happened at the very entrance of the door. There was blood right there on the door handle.
The blood on the floor leads detectives inside the house.
There, you could follow the blood trail, and it went into the kitchen. There were several knives that had blood on them inside of the drawer. There was also evidence like someone tried to use the phone, and there was blood on the side of the phone.
The blood leads to the bedroom, where detectives are met with a gruesome sight. In the middle of the floor lies the lifeless body of 42-year-old Genora Guillory.
You could see evident tears in her skin, which, I mean, we knew at the time were deep stab wounds. She was beaten severely. There was blood from basically the floor to the ceiling.
The lamp was broken and stuff knocked over in the bedroom.
I've seen other homicides that I've worked that this one was more brutal.
The body was also half closed, legs opened, and she was pinned against the wall. There was a possibility that she had been raped.
Detectives in this small parish don't investigate many homicides, let alone one this brutal. They call in the Louisiana State Police to help process the scene.
They took some DNA samples of the material that was found under her fingernails.
The samples are sent to the lab to see if there are any traces of the killer's DNA.
We didn't find any type of murder weapons. We found that it was actually no forced entry. We pretty well figured that it was somebody that she knew and had a little bit of trust in to open the door.
As police collect evidence, Genora's neighbors, Philip and Amy Skipper, arrive on the scene.
They were, of course, shocked. Philip's wife, Amy, she was really destroyed, and she was a friend of Miss Guillory's.
Police inform Genora's family. Her brother-in-law, Albert, is the first to get the terrible news.
I received a call from the sheriff's office indicating that Genora was dead, had been murdered, and obviously it was just an unbelievably bad moment. To Genora's sister, my spouse at that time, Yvonne, that was probably the single most devastating moment in her life.
The family rushes to the scene. When they arrive, detectives ask them for any details they can provide about Genora.
Genora grew up in Eunice, Louisiana, a small town in St. Landry Parish. From the time that Genora was a young girl in school, she was a very giving person. She was a very intelligent woman, filled with love for life, filled with love for animals.
Genora worked at an insurance company in Baton Rouge, but chose to live in rural Clinton, where she could indulge in her passion for animals.
She had 30 dogs, she had 3 or 4 horses, she had rescue animals, she took care of friends' animals if they couldn't. Animals were a big part of her life.
Friends were a big part of Genora's life too. She was thrilled when a sweet couple moved in across the street, and they immediately hit it off.
Philip and Amy Skipper moved into her neighborhood, and I felt very comfortable that she had developed this warm relationship with the Skippers.
Over the years, Genora and her neighbors became close friends.
Genora told me how reliable they were and how hardworking they were.
Genora really liked her neighbors, and she thought of the Skippers almost like family.
Now her friends are heartbroken over Genora's violent death, and police are faced with the puzzle of finding her killer.
It made no sense. Genora had no enemies, and she wasn't involved in anything shady or suspicious.
When the autopsy report comes back the next day, it concludes that the murder took place between 11 p.m. and 2 a.m. It also reveals just how brutal Genora's final moments were. She was shot 5 times with a .22 caliber gun and stabbed 5 times. But neither of these attacks caused her death.
A severe blow to the back of the head severed her brainstem from her body. She was actually alive, and she was fighting back and was stabbed and shot.
This was one of the most violent homicides that I've worked. It was a very much overkill, which usually means it is a crime of passion.
This was a particularly brutal, dastardly deed. We all stood outside Genora's house that morning and talked about who could possibly have done this.
Despite the concern of Genora's family and friends, detectives can't rule out anyone as a suspect.
We began talking to the neighbors and co-workers, the ones that showed up, and just started trying to get information.
One person in particular draws investigators' attention: Genora's neighbor, Philip Skipper.
Philip was real calm. What really got me was his over wanting to help too much, you know. We just had a feeling Philip knew something.
Coming up, investigators uncover a dark obsession.
He was infatuated with her and couldn't take no for an answer.
And menacing secrets.
They called her names behind her back all the time, but never to her face.
There was an incentive for them to actually murder her.
That leads them to a suspect they never expected.
They went on a tour of the murder scene, and he described the whole thing.
He just blurted out.
After 42-year-old Genora Guillory is found savagely killed in her home, detectives in Clinton, Louisiana suspect that her neighbor, Philip Skipper, might know something about the murder.
Philip was over helpful at the crime scene, and it is something that we wanted to check out more.
Police decide to bring in Philip Skipper and his wife, Amy, for an interview.
Genora really liked her neighbors, and the Skippers had a young child, and their stepson, who was 15 years old at the time.
Philip Skipper tells investigators that when his young family first moved to Clinton, they were down on their luck, but their neighbor Janora kindly helped out.
She started to take them under her umbrella and make sure that they had food and made sure that they had electricity.
When the Skippers needed extra money for baby food or diapers, Janora was always there. The trailer they were living in, for example, was really dilapidated, so Janora helped them buy a new trailer. She helped them improve their lives as much as she could.
Janora's kindness didn't stop there.
She started to employ Philip to do all of the work in her yard and around the house, and employed Amy Skipper to do the work inside her house.
Janora treated the Skippers like family and trusted them with keys to her property.
She was just a very, very generous neighbor.
Detectives want to know if the Skippers ever argued with Janora. Amy Skipper said their relationship had recently been strained by an unfortunate incident.
Philip Skipper was raising pit bulls, and there was one dog that was not a pit that didn't get along with his other pit bulls, and Janora agreed to keep that in her kennel with her dogs. Well, that dog somehow got loose during the day while Janora was at work. The dog ran back to the Skipper's trailer and killed a goat. They kept as a pet. Amy Skipper ran over to Janora's house, got on the phone, called Janora at work, and was upset with Janora. Now that's witnessed by a couple of Janora's co-workers who heard Janora's end of the conversation. She was crying by the end of this phone call. That's how upset Janora was. And Janora told Amy Skipper on the phone, "Leave the key at my house, get out of my house, and never come back."
When police question Philip about the conflict, he tells them that he and Amy had since patched things up with Janora, and they were back on friendly terms.
Philip Skipper was dismissive about the falling out. He said it was just a dispute among neighbors, and they worked it out, and there was no lingering after effects.
Police are skeptical about Philip's version of events, and when they notice scratches on his arms, they wonder if they were made by Janora while trying to fight for her life.
Questioned him about that. He said it was from him and his stepson wrestling in the yard.
Not convinced by his story, investigators ask Philip where he was on the night of the murder.
And he said he was asleep at the time that the murder happened.
To confirm Philip's story, police asked to interview his 15-year-old stepson, John Ballio.
When you interview the juveniles in Louisiana, you had to have permission of the guardian or the parent, which we had. I mean, they did cooperate there and let us talk to them.
When detectives questioned John, they noticed scratches on his arms too. Is it possible Janora fought back against two attackers?
John Ballio had marks on him. He gave us the same story.
John corroborates his stepdad's story. But police are still suspicious.
The marks on their arms was really something that we wanted to check out more if they was being truthful. So after that interview, we did decide to have a polygraph set up.
Philip and John agree to take the test, but before it can be scheduled, investigators uncover a critical detail.
During the course of the investigation, we did learn about an insurance policy Miss Guillory had taken out on herself, and the money would go to the Skippers.
Was an insurance payout reason enough for the Skippers to kill their friend and neighbor.
With a lack of motive, it's really hard to find the killer.
The insurance policy was an incentive for them to actually...
Police have just discovered that murder victim Janora Guillory's neighbors, the Skipper family, are the beneficiaries of Janora's $25,000 life insurance policy.
And it's just kind of unusual that the neighbor would have an insurance policy and list the other neighbor as a beneficiary. They're not related.
The insurance policy raises eyebrows for investigators, but Janora's family is well aware of the policy and does not suspect foul play.
Janora wanted to make sure that the Skippers had the food that they needed, had the clothing that they needed for at least a period of time should she meet an untimely departure. The Skippers, after Janora's death, did not know how to collect. They contacted me and asked me to assist them, and I did.
Still, police believe the insurance money is a possible motive. That, coupled with the scratches on Philip and John's arms, convinces detectives to take the next step.
Philip Skipper and John Ballio showed up at the Baton Rouge Police Department, which has a polygraphy unit, and they both took separate polygraph tests.
The polygraph interrogator asked 15-year-old John Ballio for an alibi.
John Ballio said he was at home asleep when the murders occurred.
Both John and Philip are asked about their knowledge of the murder by the examiner. And when their responses are analyzed, detectives are surprised by the results.
Both of their tests came back with no real signs of deception.
The results on the polygraphs, they was inconclusive, and the officer that was doing the polygraph didn't think that they hadn't done the murder.
The results are a blow to the investigation, and lead detectives drop the Skippers as suspects.
We still didn't have no physical evidence, and the polygraph made us think, well, we need to start looking elsewhere.
Detectives interview Janora's friends and coworkers about anyone she may have dated recently.
A friend of Miss Guillory's did give us the name of Tommy Alexandra.
Police track down Tommy at his home in a nearby town. He agrees to talk to police. Tommy tells investigators that he met Janora months prior at a feed store where she was stocking up on food for her animals. Janora agreed to meet Tommy for a drink, their first of several dates.
Tommy and Janora had dated on and off for some time.
But it soon became apparent to Janora that Tommy had other love interests.
It turned out Tommy Alexander was not just dating Janora at the time. He was dating a couple of different women.
Janora really liked him, but Tommy didn't want to settle down. He wasn't going to commit to one woman.
Is it possible that an argument between Janora and Tommy could have turned deadly?
We interviewed Tommy about the homicide.
On the night Janora was murdered, Tommy says that he was at home. Police talk to his girlfriend, who confirms his alibi.
They were able to eventually eliminate him as a suspect. As far as physical evidence to tie a specific suspect to the scene, there really wasn't anything. They kept trying to dig for facts, but they were hampered by the fact that, once again, they couldn't figure out why anyone wanted to kill her.
Determined to get justice for Janora, investigators interview her coworkers and discover that she had an ongoing conflict with a man in her life.
We learned about another friend, Steve Williams, from coworkers, And basically what we learned is that he wanted to date Miss Guillory.
But the feeling is not mutual.
Steve Williams managed to persuade Janora to go out one time, and that was enough for her. She didn't want to go out with him again, and she let him know. But he didn't take that no very well.
Miss Guillory had really got concerned about him, according to her friends. He would sit out in the parking lot and wait for her to get off from work, would show up unannounced.
Steve Williams showed up out of the blue while she was working her horses.
He pursued her a little more aggressively than was comfortable for the family.
From co-workers' explanations over there, he seemed to be stalking Janora.
Janora said, "He's bothering me and he needs to stop."
When detectives look into Steve Williams, they're shocked to learn that their potential suspect is one of their own.
Steve Williams was a Baton Rouge police officer.
Detectives have learned that Steve Williams, who had been repeatedly contacting Janora Guillory in the months before her murder, is a fellow police officer.
Steve Williams had recently gotten a job with the Baton Rouge Police Department, and he was a probationary police officer in the next jurisdiction over.
He was infatuated with her, and he was just a guy who couldn't take no for an answer.
Janora's friends knew that she was not interested, and of course after the murder, when the police are asking, well, who may have been upset with Janora, he became a focus of the investigation.
When you investigate law enforcement officers, it's harder than most because they know the law as good as you do. But we did have good cooperation through Baton Rouge City Police Department. Whatever we needed, they was willing to provide.
As investigators gather more information about Steve, they uncover an intriguing tip from one of his colleagues, 29-year-old officer Tabitha McCants.
Tabitha came forward during the investigation, and she had worked with Steve Williams at Baton Rouge Police Office.
It turns out she got kind of a bad vibe from him.
Tabitha tells investigators that she overheard Steve having heated phone conversations with a woman on several occasions while at the police shooting range.
She said they'd make multiple phone calls.
Police need to check Janora's phone records to find out if Janora was the person Steve had been calling. Tabitha also tells investigators that Steve mentioned shooting targets at his mother's home. And when they ask Tabitha if Steve mentioned the type of gun he used, her answer sets off alarm bells.
She says he used a .22, which by this time we found out that a .22 was used in the shooting of Miss Guillory.
As a police officer, of course, Steve Williams had firearms, the .22 caliber pistol, which is certainly not a police gun, but he did have a .22, and he shot it at his mother's house.
Based on the history of him stalking Miss Guillory and the access to a .22, that's when we decided that we would check Steve Williams out a little bit more.
When detectives check Janora's phone records, they quickly discover an alarming pattern.
Looking at the phone records, Steve Williams, in my opinion, was stalking Miss Guillory.
The phone records showed 35 calls to Janora's home from the shooting range in 4 months, and an escalating pattern of calls and messages.
Steve Williams had left several messages for Janora the weekend that she was killed. In fact, he told her in a message that he would stop by her house on the day she was killed.
Investigators don't waste a second bringing Steve in for questioning, and when they do, his demeanor has them instantly suspicious.
Steve was real nervous. It was just something about him like he was hiding something from us.
Steve insists he had nothing to do with Janora's murder. and claims he stayed at his mother's house the night Janora was killed.
Steve's mama's residence, about 40 minutes away from where the homicide was.
Police believe Janora was murdered between 11 p.m. and 2 a.m. Could Steve have slipped out undetected while his mother was sleeping?
Janora was shot with a .22 caliber pistol, and the fact that he had a .22, was nearby on the day she was killed, it really put him very high up on the suspect list.
That's when we had him take a polygraph.
Steve's answers are analyzed and the results sent to detectives.
Steve Williams' polygraph examination came back with some clear signs that he was possibly being deceptive.
His polygraph basically told us that he may have known something about the murder. Made me really think that he had something to do with this. That's when Steve advised he wasn't going to talk to us no more. He wanted a lawyer.
Despite Steve's refusal to cooperate, detectives continued to investigate him.
He looked like a good suspect. Now the question would be, can they find the evidence to prove it? They got a warrant for his house, they got warrants for his personal cars, and they got a warrant for his police car. Now, to do that, they had to work with the Baton Rouge Police Department. And the detectives were hoping to recover a .22, knife, anything with blood stains, anything to link him to the crime scene. They didn't find anything.
It's a major setback. But detectives still have one last piece of forensic evidence that they believe could connect Steve Williams to the murder. They get a search warrant for a DNA sample from Steve to see if it's a match for genetic material found on Janora's body.
We had those fingernail scrapings that were taken off her from the State Police Crime Lab.
It was determined, yes, there was some male DNA under her fingernails.
Coming up, investigators zero in on a vicious killer.
I picked out the worst photo that I could find of the crime scene, and I threw it in front of his face and made him look at it and said, did she deserve it?
Police hope to use DNA evidence to link Baton Rouge police officer Steve Williams to Janora Guillory's murder. Steve's DNA is compared to material found under Janora's fingernails.
His DNA was not actually determined to be under her fingernails.
The DNA also doesn't match any known criminals in the FBI database.
The fingernail scrapings came back to a known male genetic profile.
With no physical evidence linking Steve Williams to the crime, he's ruled out as a suspect, leaving investigators at a standstill.
The case had gone cold, and they had no other leads to check into it.
The case stays cold for an entire year.
There was great disappointment and great frustration on the part of the family when the case went cold.
The shock of Janora's murder may have faded, but the community lives in fear of a killer who's still at large.
When a murder occurs, it's very alarming. Everybody's on edge, especially after the case was at a standstill.
Then, on July 27, 2001, a tip comes in that changes everything.
And I got a call on the telephone straight to the office. It was Detective Mark Apperson from Tangipahoa Sheriff's Office. And he just blurted out. He's like, do you have a woman named Mrs. G that was murdered over there? And I just kind of looked over at Don and I said, yeah, we do have a woman named Miss G that was killed.
The detective there was working a domestic violence battery, and the victim had came in and told him that her boyfriend knew something about a murder in Clinton.
The woman tells detectives her boyfriend's name is Donnie Fisher.
We rode over there and found Donnie Fisher. We brought him over there to the Tangipahoa Sheriff's Office.
But Donnie Fisher is not in the mood to talk.
You could tell he knew something. That's when I picked out the worst photo that I could find of the crime scene. And I threw it in front of his face and made him look at it and said, "Did she deserve it?"
Reluctantly, Donnie looks down at the gruesome photos, and moments later, his whole demeanor changes.
He started to break down and cry. And he looked at it and then he told us, basically, his confession.
Donnie says he heard a detailed account of the murder from one of Janora's neighbors.
The neighbor took Donnie Fisher on a tour of the murder scene.
He said once they got there, he took them and said, "This is how it happened."
Investigators are stunned. They question all of Janora's neighbors at the outset of the investigation, but it didn't uncover any useful information or lead to an arrest. Detectives demand that Donnie reveal the neighbor's name.
He said it was John Ballio, Philip Skipper's stepson.
Detectives are shocked. They press Donnie for details. And he claims that John told him about the murder while cleaning up Janora Guillory's house.
Janora Guillory's family had hired John Ballio to go clean up the crime scene. Donnie Fisher, he was out there helping, so as they're cleaning up the house, John Ballio was bragging to Donnie Fisher about how he killed Janora Guillory. John Ballio took Donnie and said, "Here's what we did here, here's what we did here," and he described the whole thing.
Investigators don't know whether to believe Donnie's story, especially since John Ballio's polygraph was considered truthful. Yet every word of it lines up with the evidence.
John actually showed Donnie how Miss G ran through the house, and talking to Donnie, he described everything that we'd put together from what we seen at the crime scene.
Detectives want to know, why would Ballio want Janora dead after all she had done for his family?
Miss Guillory would rather help somebody than hurt somebody. She would do anything she could to help the Skippers.
It's kind of heartbreaking.
Police now believe that Donnie is telling the truth. So they quickly file an arrest warrant.
We picked up John Ballio late on a Friday evening, and we brought him back to East Police Center Sheriff's Office for charges of first-degree murder.
Investigators now believe the key to cracking this case is a confession from the alleged killer. Luckily, a recent change in Louisiana state law allows them to question a minor accused of murder without a lawyer or guardian present.
The police had to get John Ballio to come clean and tell the truth.
We brought him to my office and advised him of his rights.
He bounced from here to there during his statements at first when we initially questioned him. And then we started talking about the brutality of this homicide.
After probably an hour and a half interviewing, he finally came and told the story about how he killed Miss G.
But first, Ballio needs to get something off his chest.
He didn't do it by himself.
Pointing the finger right back at Philip Skipper.
Detectives are speechless. John Ballio just implicated his stepdad, Philip, in the murder of Janora Guillory. And that's not all.
He pointed to several other people, too.
Detectives in Clinton, Louisiana have just arrested Philip Skipper's stepson, John Ballio, for the murder of 42-year-old Janora Guillory.
John started basically telling us how this went down.
And John claims he didn't act alone. He points the finger at his stepdad, Philip Skipper, and two other people.
Johnny Hoyt was a brother-in-law to Philip Skipper, and Lisa Skipper Hoyt was a sister to Philip Skipper. He said they killed this woman together.
Lisa and Johnny, that's the first time their name had ever came up. And we were, of course, shocked.
John Ballio gave a detailed confession on videotape to exactly what happened.
John claims that Philip, Johnny, and Lisa had formed a white supremacist gang called the Brotherhood, and that killing Genora was meant to be John's initiation into the group.
It would be my true test of brotherhood.
It was a skinhead gang. Actually, they were very anti-black and neo-Nazi.
Philip Skipper, he had two completely different faces on him. I mean, he had the one he presented to Genora Guillory, which was, the nice neighbor. And then behind her back, he called her all kind of names. He hated black people.
He basically made her believe that he was her knight in shining armor. She never saw it coming.
Killing Genora would not only initiate Ballio into their gang, but also bring a financial windfall.
Philip Skipper was smart enough to figure out that, hey, if she doesn't like us anymore, it's not going to be very long before she changes that insurance policy and names someone else as beneficiary.
Ballio tells detectives that on the night of the murder, the group had been drinking heavily. They arrived at Genora's door at 2 a.m.
When we got there, Lisa walked up to the door and knocked on it and told Miss G that she needed some money to get the baby some diapers.
And Miss G cracked the door open. That's when Johnny hit her and forced his way in there.
They just jumped on her like a pack of hyenas.
She ran through the house, down the hall, screaming for him to leave her alone. And she ran into the kitchen and got to the knife drawer trying to get her knife so she could cut him to make him leave her alone.
Eventually, she ran to her bedroom.
John told us that they took turns stabbing her, and they took turns beating her, and they took turns shooting her.
And then somebody threw the final blow that, according to the medical examiner, killed her instantly. It was a blow with a bat to the head.
Philip started hitting her with the bat. And after Miss G stopped breathing, they started raping her.
John Ballio said that they used condoms. There was not an indication of any seminal fluid or any semen at the scene that night.
With no evidence to back up John Ballio's claim of sexual assault, the rape charges are dropped. But detectives are still determined to bring Genora's killers to justice.
John Ballio's confession gave us enough probable cause to make sure this case got prosecuted.
For cooperating with police, John is given a deal. He pleads guilty to second-degree murder and receives a juvenile life sentence to expire when he turns 21. Lisa Hoyt also takes a plea agreement and is sentenced to 25 years. That leaves Johnny Hoyt and Philip Skipper to face justice in separate trials. When news of the arrests gets out, Genora's family is devastated.
When the family found that Philip and John were involved, they were really, really upset and angry that the people that Genora had taken care of so diligently were the ones involved in her murder.
The prosecutors are determined to bring Genora's killers to justice, but they have a problem. There's no concrete evidence linking either Philip or Johnny to the crime scene.
There was some male DNA under her fingernails, but it did not match the samples that we had from the 3 males in this case.
Both cases rest entirely on the testimony of John Ballio.
John Ballieu walked us through what happened that night. And that was crucial for our case. He actually brought everything together and made the whole situation make sense to a jury. With Philip Skipper's trial, the jury came back with a unanimous verdict. He was guilty of second-degree murder.
Philip Skipper is sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Philip's wife, Amy, is not charged with any crime.
A lot of times people ask, what about Amy? What about Amy? Amy Skipper had no idea what her husband was doing.
I genuinely believe that Amy Skipper did not have any knowledge of what was going to take place. I believe that she had nothing to do with this.
Johnny Hoyt was found guilty of second-degree murder and sentenced to 25 years without the possibility of parole. But for the family of Jenora Guillory, no punishment could possibly make up for the pain they suffered in the wake of her murder.
Jenora's father died of a broken heart. It was just a very, very difficult time for
2009. 22-year-old Braden Fuchsa is enjoying summer on his own. He's just moved out of his parents' house into an apartment in the college town of Lawrence, Kansas.
Braden was really dead set that he wanted to be out on his own. He had the opportunity to move in with an individual that he went to school with. They had found him an apartment, and they were going to move in together.
It was a big deal for me for him to leave home, but he wanted to be independent, which we encourage. I mean, you have to let him go at some point.
Braden still sees his parents often, visiting them at home in Olathe, just 20 miles east of Lawrence.
He'd come over to eat and he'd come over to get leftovers. Todd likes to grill, and so that was Braden's big thing, was to grill, and he would come over and they would trade cooking secrets and recipes.
Braden also stops by regularly on his way to and from work. He's a security guard at a large outdoor retailer in Olathe, not far from his parents' house.
He said his dream job would be to work at Bass Pro so he could be around the fishing rods and the guns and everything.
When he's not at work, Braden spends almost all his time doing outdoor activities.
Braden, from the get-go, enjoyed the outdoors. We boated, we skied and tubed and wakeboard. Every free moment that we had, we were fishing. He was an outdoor person, 100%.
He's been camping since he can remember, since he was a toddler.
What is that? Did you catch him?
He loved to fish, and he loved to hunt.
Braden has an especially strong affinity for mountains, which was apparent on a family trip to Colorado in 2007.
He had more fun that week. He was constantly, oh, let's stop and do this, and let's stop. You know, we were hiking, and I mean, he was just beside himself.
In mid-July 2009, Braden's parents are out of town for a couple days. When they get back home Wednesday the 15th, Starla contacts Braden.
I text him because he knew we had been out of town and told him that we were home, we had made it okay.
Starla exchanges several texts with her son. She tells him that she and Todd have plans to see a film that night.
I told him I hated to cut our time short, but I had to go because the movie was going to start, and I'd talk to him later.
Starla and Todd spend the evening relaxing at the movies. But when they get home, they notice something odd.
Todd had gotten on the computer and was looking, and he said, Braden transferred some money.
It's not a big deal. It's usually one of the type of situations where Braden or a daughter would call and say, I'm short on money, I don't get paid till Friday, can you float me some money? And it happened all the time.
But this time, the amount that Braden has transferred is much higher than usual.
It was $800. Usually we're talking $300–400. Just enough to pay his portion of the rent or insurance being due or something like that. I made a phone call to him and got his voicemail, left him a message just asking him what's up, were you in trouble, and you got enough money.
Starla and Todd go to bed feeling curious, but not overly worried about the transfer. They figure their son will give them an explanation in the morning. But the next day, Braden doesn't call.
Thursday came around, still hadn't heard from him, and it wasn't like Braden. Starla and him were very close. They text back and forth daily.
Then, another day passes without word from Braden. His parents spend the rest of the week searching for him, making a routine of calling regularly and driving by his apartment and work to look for him.
We didn't know what was going on. We just bound and determined we were going to keep up the ritual of, going to his hangout and try to find him.
Although Braden's parents are very worried, they don't call the police, wanting to respect their son's newfound independence. But they do reach out to his friends, including his ex-girlfriend, Elena Ryan. The young couple dated for almost 4 years, breaking up only a year and a half earlier.
I spoke with Starla and told her that I had seen Braden at a gas station in town. But it was a very brief interaction, just kind of a hi, how you doing sort of thing. He didn't seem overly eager to talk to me. And because he had been trying to pursue a reconciliation prior to that, that seems a little strange.
Elena's encounter with Braden is only hours before Starla's last text with her son on Wednesday, July 15th. His parents' concern grows.
I mean, you can imagine the worry. We were both a wreck.
It's been 4 full days since Starla and Todd have heard from their son. They're at a loss as to what to do next when they have a sudden suspicion.
For some reason, on Sunday morning, we got up and it was just one of those feelings.
In our master bedroom closet, there's a shelf in there.
We kept a 9mm in the closet for protection. Our granddaughter had been there 2 weeks before, and I had put it up high in the closet so that she could not get it. So I had just seen it the week before when I'd went and checked on it.
So I seen the gun case there up on the shelf, and I don't know why I did it, but I just grabbed a hold of the gun case itself. It was empty, and my heart just sank.
Only family members know where the gun is kept. Todd and Starla are sure that Braden has taken it.
The gun was gone, and we become very nervous, and Todd said, we're gonna file a police report now.
The search for Braden takes on a new urgency. Where did he go? And why does he need a gun?
It's the worst feeling in the world. Our stomachs just dropped.
Coming up, Braden's parents are prevented from filing a missing persons report for their son.
Our emotions were extremely high at that point. We didn't know what else to do.
22-year-old son Braden in 4 days, despite repeatedly trying to contact him. But the alarms really go off when a handgun goes missing from their home.
The minute we discovered the gun was missing, we went straight to the police.
But at the Olathe Police Department, the Fuchses are not permitted to file a missing persons report for Braden because he is over 21 and no longer living at home.
Our problem was he was an adult. He's still our child, but they don't see it that way.
They actually told us since he was living in Lawrence with a roommate, the roommate would need to be the one that submitted the report.
And it was kind of frustrating because our emotions were extremely high at that point. We didn't know what else to do.
Just in conversation, I mentioned that, well, he's got my pistol. That changed the whole subject. They automatically took our report and filed it.
Braden's parents give police a detailed description of their son, his vehicle, and the handgun. Detective Kenton Thompson is put on the case.
I reviewed the report that we had this missing 22-year-old man, and that he basically had just had just disappeared. We've got the handgun gone from his parents' house, so obviously now we've got this concern of what's that about.
As Detective Thompson begins his investigation, Braden's parents go home and wait. But they can't stop thinking about the gun.
You don't know if he was gonna hurt himself, if something went wrong and he was protecting himself, if something had happened to him and somebody was after him. You just don't know.
Braden's parents are confident that their son is an experienced gun user.
He's been using a gun since he was big enough to walk. He was hunting by the time he was 5.
But they also know that the gun that Braden took from their house is not meant for hunting.
A lot of police carry 9mm. It's more for target shooting, and it's more of a protection gun than anything.
Braden's former girlfriend, Elena, is mystified as well.
Braden had his own guns. He had his own handgun. I know he had one in Lawrence. Why would he take his dad's handgun instead of his own?
Looking for information, Braden's parents try calling the last people to have contact with their son.
Braden's cell phone was part of our account, so I had access to his records.
And we took like the last 20 numbers and he texts them.
You know, this is Braden's dad. Haven't seen Braden in a little while. Can you please call me?
At first, no one responds. But slowly, calls start coming in, including one from Braden's roommate.
He called, and him and I visited a little bit, and he did not know where Braden had gone.
But his roommate does know something else.
We found out that on Wednesday, Braden grabbed his bag and told his roommate that he was coming over to Olathe to spend the night with Todd and I, with his parents.
But Braden's parents were home on Wednesday night, and Braden never showed up.
To say that he was coming to our house was nothing big, and the roommate wouldn't have checked it out. We wouldn't have thought anything about it.
Given Braden's lie, his parents tried to pin down their son's actual movements.
We knew he had been at our house at some time because the gun was missing. We have the neighbors across the street, and we went over and asked them if they had seen Braden, and they said yes, they had seen him at the house that morning and said he was there about 15 minutes or so. He had pulled in, waved to him, you know, hollered hi, went into the house, and come back out and waved to him again and got in his car and left. So that was about 10:30, 10:40.
It was later that same day that Starla last texted with Braden. His cell phone bill indicates that Braden didn't call or text anyone else after that point.
I had talked to him at 2:30, so that kind of gave us a timeline of what he was doing.
As Braden's parents try to put all the pieces together, another clue surfaces. Todd receives a call from Megan Loach, who, unknown to his parents, is Braden's new girlfriend.
I met Braden at a party in Lawrence at the end of May 2009. Braden is really funny. He's the center of anything. Everybody who was at the party was there for Braden. Everybody knew Braden, and he made me laugh. I instantly liked Braden, and I think he instantly liked me.
Megan and Braden have only been dating for 2 months, but she feels close enough to him that she is disturbed by his behavior the last time they meet, the night before he disappears.
He spent the night at my house. We made dinner and we were hanging out. Braden was just really upset and just not his normal self. Braden's really outgoing and he's always making people laugh, and it was weird to see him just worried. He just looked worried.
The next morning, Wednesday, the day he disappears, Braden leaves abruptly.
I think it was about mid-morning. Braden got up and left, and he usually doesn't leave without saying goodbye or something, or he usually hangs around. And then I had heard a car start in the parking lot. So I looked out my window and he was pulling out. So I texted him and said no goodbye or not saying goodbye anymore or something. Braden just texted me back and said, "Goodbye, Megan." That was it. That was the last time I had talked to him.
4 days later, no one, including his parents, has heard from Braden. And the next phone call sends the Fuchsas even deeper down the rabbit hole.
Later that afternoon, we got a phone call from the police department. They had located his vehicle in Douglas, Wyoming area.
Coming up, Braden has been hiding a dark secret from his family.
We would never have suspected that something like this was going on, ever. It was almost like a Twilight Zone moment.
In 2009, Braden Fuchsa leaves his home in Lawrence, Kansas. His whereabouts are completely unknown by his friends and family. Then, 4 days later, police report that his vehicle has been found in Wyoming.
What is in Wyoming? He knew no one in Wyoming, and why is he going that direction? What was causing him to go there? We were just a little dumbfounded, to be honest. There was a lot going through our minds.
Wyoming Highway Patrol found the vehicle as an abandoned vehicle. They did a check on it at 10:44 a.m. on Thursday, July 16th. There's no one around it. Now, at that point, Braden had not been reported missing, so they left because they had no other information available to them.
3 days later, on Sunday, July 19th, Braden's parents file the missing persons report. It's only then that Braden's information is entered into the National Crime Information Center database and made available to authorities across the country.
We got what's called a delayed entry hit off of that tag, which told us that back on the 16th, that tag was run by the Wyoming Highway Patrol.
Braden's parents tell the police that as far as they are aware, their son doesn't know anyone in Wyoming, nor has he ever been there. The development in the case makes them very uneasy.
I mean, there's just so many missing pieces to this whole thing. The more information that kept coming up, the more confused we got, and it was just so out of character.
Looking for answers, Detective Thompson contacts many of the same people that Braden's parents have spoken to. He agrees that something seems very wrong.
I work a lot of juvenile cases, and typically the first people I talk to is their girlfriend or their boyfriend and their best friend. Those two people. If anyone's going to have information, usually have some idea of what has happened. And in this case, his roommate was his best friend, and he has no information. And Megan was completely surprised by it also.
Braden's former longtime girlfriend, Elena, isn't surprised that he didn't confide in anyone.
From my perspective, Braden didn't have a lot of close friends. He was a sweet, sweet guy, but he was very quiet. I don't know if I would call him shy, but he was just very quiet and didn't put himself out there.
But Braden's new girlfriend has a differing account of his character.
Braden was a very outgoing person. I'm kind of shy, so Braden definitely had to be more outgoing to get me kind of out of my shell. It's weird hearing about someone that you were so close to in a situation that you never expected. It started to become more like I never really knew Braden.
As Detective Thompson struggles to get some insight into Braden's actions, a possible motive emerges. Braden is facing potential prison time on a theft charge.
The theft charge resulted from Braden stealing some cash from his employer. It was a felony level theft, which means in Kansas it was over $1,000.
Braden's parents were not told of their son's arrest when they filed the missing persons report. When police call to notify them, they're stunned.
We were very shocked. He'd never been in trouble ever. I don't know if he'd ever even had a speeding ticket. He was not that kind of kid.
Braden is a straight, go-forward kid. And when he was in trouble, his mom usually knew about it. He would confess. So, you know, just anything to happen like that was just, it didn't happen with Braden.
But as Braden's parents think back to their son's behavior, the recent transfer from their account, as well as some earlier events, they begin to recognize signs of his growing money problems.
Towards the midsummer time frame, Bass Pro had cut his department to a limited amount of hours, and it left him with 8 hours for the entire week.
Still, Braden manages to keep his true financial state under wraps.
Braden reinforced us that he had enough side jobs that he was getting by.
But in reality, Braden's financial troubles are quickly catching up with him.
His roommate told me in June, Braden was late getting his share of the rent to him. He didn't think a whole lot about that at the time. But then in July, he was late again, and you know, like a week late.
As Braden's parents later learn, their son is so desperate for money that a week before he disappears, he dips into the till at work and gets caught.
Braden worked in security at Bass Pro, so his job was transferring money back and forth at closing time, putting stuff in the safe. The way we understand is they were closing up. Braden had taken money from the registers to the lockup spot. They confronted Braden when he come into work the next day. Braden said, yeah, it's back at my apartment. They brought in the police, talked to him a while. He confessed everything, and the police actually took him back to Lawrence to pick up the money. It's my understanding that he returned nearly all of the money. I don't think quite all of it, but nearly all of the money.
Despite his cooperation with the law, Braden is immediately taken into custody.
After that initial report was made and he was arrested, he was taken directly to the Johnson County Adult Detention Center.
Braden spends the night in jail. He is released the next day, but according to Braden's roommate, the harrowing experience of being locked up stays with him.
Braden was, quote, pretty freaked out about having spent the night in jail. Being arrested, you know, for him was a pretty major life event and was distressing for him.
Braden was scared. I think when he got arrested, they had exaggerated how much trouble he was in, and I think that Braden he's never been in trouble before, and he was just really frightened by that, and he thought he was going to go to jail for, you know, a couple of years.
Braden is due in court for a preliminary hearing on July 16th, but as the date approaches, Braden appears to set a plan in motion.
When he left his apartment on the 15th, he told his roommate, I'm gonna go spend the night with my parents in Olathe, okay? That was Wednesday night, he had court the next day. Well, that is actually when he left.
When his case is called the next morning, Braden's car is already 2 states away, in Wyoming. Braden is nowhere to be found. All signs point to his being a fugitive from the law, but no one saw it coming.
We would never have suspected that something like this was going on, ever, because we've always had such an open relationship with our kids. It was almost like a Twilight Zone moment. It's like, what is this? I don't understand.
From his conversations with friends and family, Detective Thompson paints a portrait of what he believes to be Braden's last days in Kansas. A young man, ashamed of his crime and extremely afraid of getting a harsh sentence, panics and flees.
I believe his perception of it was that it was going to be much more serious for him than it probably would have been. This was the lowest level that would qualify as a felony theft. He didn't have any criminal history, so this would not have been a potentially serious sentence. It wasn't going to involve a prison term or anything like that. If he truly understood the likely outcome, perhaps he would not have been so distraught about the arrest.
Myself, my wife, the detective have all called and left voicemails on his phone saying that come back, hit your court date. This is not as bad as you think.
While there now seems to be strong motive for Braden's sudden bolt from Kansas, his exact whereabouts are still a mystery. Is Braden running from the law and carrying a handgun? Or has something much worse happened to him? Coming up, as more details come to light, investigators make a devastating discovery.
We only missed having some contact with him by an hour or maybe an hour and 15 minutes.
For a felony-level theft, Braden Fuchsa flees his home state of Kansas. On the day he is due in court for a preliminary hearing, his car turns up 700 miles away in Wyoming. But Braden is nowhere to be found. As the details of Braden's case emerge, the investigation focuses on the largest piece of evidence, Braden's car.
When the Highway Patrol found the vehicle, Braden was not present.
And then we got a call that they had went ahead and opened it. Nothing looked suspicious in it whatsoever.
The Wyoming Highway Patrol tows the vehicle to Douglas, a small town just north of where it was found. Braden's parents make the long drive to pick it up themselves.
Star and I left early Friday morning and drove the entire route to Douglas.
I think the drive to get there was about 13 hours. It was a very long drive. You're very anxious because you're scared of what you're going to find once you get there. It was a very emotional trip.
As Braden's parents make their way to Douglas, they retrace the journey they believe their son made 10 days earlier.
From Cheyenne north to Douglas, the population is hardly any. You go through some very small towns along the way. The houses are far and few between. It's got the hills and very pretty country.
As they drive through the changing landscape, they look for physical cues that would indicate why Braden chose this direction.
We don't really understand why that area, even though it's absolutely beautiful. There were the plains there, it's just gorgeous, but that's not what he's always wanted. I mean, he's always wanted the mountains. So the area that we found the car, it just doesn't coincide with what we know that he wanted.
It's late at night by the time the Fuchsas arrive in Douglas. The next morning, they go directly to the tow yard to pick up Braden's car.
This is something that's kind of bothered me. There was a key code on the door, a lock, and Braden always used that. He always stuck his keys under the floor mat. That was his habit, and I looked under the floor mat and the keys were there. That just, in my eyes, tells me he locked his vehicle and walked away.
As Starla and Todd continue to look through their son's belongings, the more convinced they are that Braden willingly left his car behind.
The clothes looked like he had went through the bag, kind of trying to sort out what he was going to take and what he wasn't going to take.
Because Braden has so recently moved out of his parents' home, Starla and Todd have a good idea of what items he might be carrying with him.
His cell phone was missing and he took his wallet. The boots were gone. There was a pair of jeans, so that tells me that he had one pair of jeans, the pair he was wearing, the boots, maybe a couple t-shirts, and the gun was missing.
But why Braden abandoned his car baffles detectives. Was he trying to throw off police, or did he leave his car by the side of the highway in the hopes that it would be found?
I quite honestly just cannot make sense of that. I don't know why he would abandon that vehicle that way where he did, because you certainly know it's going to be found. I mean, that's probably the easiest place to find a vehicle. You leave alongside the interstate, you know the highway patrol is going to come by and stop and check on it.
Upon their return to Kansas, the Fuchsas hand over to the Olathe police several items they found in the car. One of them leads Detective Thompson to a key witness.
It was a receipt from a tire repair place out of Wheatland, Wyoming. That receipt indicated that he had purchased a used tire, and of course it had the company's name and phone number on it.
Detective Thompson calls the garage and is able to speak with the mechanic who saw Braden.
I was woke up from the guy that runs the pit stop Conoco that there was a fellow that came in and had a blown out tire.
Reuben Kaufman is a mechanic in Wheatland, Wyoming. He often gets calls for people who have broken down along Interstate 25, but that day, he would unknowingly help a fugitive.
I got the phone call around 5:30, 6 o'clock. His tire blew out at the Bordeaux exit, south of Wheatland, exit 67. He wanted me to run down there and put another tire on it and come back and pick him up and take him back down there.
Reuben drives down the interstate and finds Braden's car on the side of the road.
The tire had blown out. It was literally shreds. I mean, it looked like it'd blown out at high speed. There was no fixing it. It was just shredded.
Reuben replaces the blown-out tire, then returns to the pit stop to pick up Braden and bring him back to his car.
He seemed like a nice, clean-cut man, you know, very nice people person.
As the two men make small talk, Braden shares with Reuben information he has kept from everyone else.
I asked him where he was going. He said he was headed for the university in Billings.
Billings, Montana, is 400 miles directly north of Wheatland.
It made sense because that's the route you would take to go to Billings, is Interstate 25.
But according to Braden's parents, their son wasn't planning on going to school, nor does he know anyone in Montana. Nevertheless, they admit that their son has long been obsessed with the state.
Braden was infatuated with Montana, and Billings would have been where he wanted to go. He at one point had checked into finding out more about the game warden system in Montana. He wanted to be outdoors and in nature. That was his goal.
It was kind of an uncanny obsession, but he was real into John Wayne movies, and so I think he just saw Montana as scarcely populated, lots of nature. He could fish, he could hunt, he could do all the things that he loved. And that was the place to do it, I guess.
Slowly, a theory begins to take shape. Braden, running from the law, decides to disappear and start a new life in Montana. When Wyoming authorities examine the area, the theory gains strength.
From where the vehicle was found, along northbound I-25 south of Douglas, at some point on up the road is a truck stop.
You know, it was a very short walk to the rest stop. And with Braden's personality, he could walk up to somebody and strike a conversation in a heartbeat and wouldn't have a problem talking his way for a trip further up the road.
The search for Braden is now broadened to include Montana and beyond.
Well, we did contact the chief of the police department for the university there in Billings, and then we also contacted Billings, Montana City Police Department. We made a poster, we distributed it along that known route. In other words, Kansas, Nebraska, Colorado, Wyoming, Montana, and even into Canada.
Detective Thompson is also able to create a more exact picture of Braden's flight out of Kansas.
My belief would be that he just drove through the night on the 15th. From kind of the time frame that Reuben has given me, he had the blown tire approximately 10 miles south of Wheatland. He got back on the road with the vehicle fixed somewhere around 8 o'clock, continued northbound on I-25.
Oddly, Braden then abandons the car less than an hour's drive north of where he got the flat. Shortly after that, the Wyoming Highway Patrol comes across the vehicle.
You know, the frustrating thing there is that, you know, we only missed having some contact with him by an hour or maybe an hour and 15 minutes, an hour and a half at the most, between when he left the vehicle and the time that Wyoming trooper stopped to check on it initially.
An hour earlier, and Braden might have been intercepted. Instead, his absence is going on 2 weeks. Disappointingly, the expanded search for Braden does not produce results.
Even though we tried to get information distributed as widely as we could, there was just no further leads and no contact.
Braden has been missing for 6 months. Suddenly, there's movement in the case.
I came in my office one morning and had a voicemail from a woman who works at the Salvation Army in Cheyenne, Wyoming. She told me she was 100% certain that she saw Braden.
Coming up, new hope that Braden is on his way home.
He said it was a long way back to Kansas.
In Kansas, a missing person poster in Cheyenne, Wyoming generates an exciting tip. Linda Curl works at a Salvation Army soup kitchen, where she sees many down-and-out transients. She is certain that Braden was one of them.
We put bread out for the homeless or the low income or whoever needs it. And this particular day, we'd had a lot of bread, so we told him, take as many as you can use. It wouldn't fit in his pocket, so he was sticking it under his arms and trying to hold 3 or 4 loaves instead of just 1 or 2. And he said it was a long way back to Kansas, so he would take it.
It was kind of exciting to hear. If you had been in the Douglas area or on north past Douglas, you know, that would be your way back.
Convinced this could be more than coincidence, Detective Thompson contacts Braden's parents. The bread story strikes a chord.
My heart just dropped because Braden loved bread. He loves Italian. It was terrible because you try to make the bread and he was stealing it all the time. You know, I mean, he would eat it before we even had it toasted.
The news fills the Fuchsas with fresh hope that Braden is on his way home. But just as quickly as the excitement builds, it begins to dissipate.
Cheyenne police looked at various places where some of their homeless people stay, and obviously watching the Salvation Army, and the Salvation Army employees obviously are now very aware to be on the lookout for him. There was just no further sighting, no further indication that he was there.
Detective Thompson begins to doubt the sighting, as it's based solely on the poster.
She sees a missing person poster for Braden, and she says that is the guy that was in here last week and had lunch. But it can be very difficult for someone to make that identification. This person was in last week, and now I'm seeing the poster this week.
But Linda remains steadfast in her conviction that it was Braden whom she saw.
I was absolutely sure it was the same person that had been here because of his eyes and his smile. He didn't look wore out and tired like a lot of our people do. He had a very nice, bright smile, very pleasant, extremely polite. He didn't look like any of our regular people. He didn't look like a homeless person.
But the trail comes to a grinding halt in Cheyenne. In the coming weeks and then months, there are no more sightings of Braden. As time goes by, Braden's loved ones begin to consider a darker theory.
Initially, I wanted to think that he just needed to get out of town for a little while, gather his thoughts, and needed some space. But the more time that went by and no one had heard from him, I was worried he may have ended his life. My biggest fear is that he just couldn't cope with all of the stresses that he had and needed a way out, and that was his way out.
For Detective Thompson, the idea that Braden wanted to end his life is just one more theory that doesn't add up.
We still don't know what his main motivation was for fleeing. But if your objective is to harm yourself, you certainly don't have to drive 10 hours to do that.
"11 months have passed since Braden's disappearance. Frustrated by the lack of new clues in the case, authorities organize a comprehensive search of the area where Braden's vehicle was abandoned.
3 things we want to be looking for: eyeglasses, the necklace, and the watch.
Oh, there was a watch?
Yeah,
And
possibly a handgun.
Searchers scour the land surrounding the highway where Braden's car was found. Family and friends privately fear what they might uncover.
I think at this point out there, they would probably be looking for a body. It's kind of in the back of everyone's heads, I think. I'm just the only one who has ever said it.
After 2 days, the searchers do not find anything. But seeing Wyoming firsthand, Detective Thompson wonders if Braden might still be out there, living under the radar.
Perhaps he just wanted to start over. Perhaps this criminal charge was just more than he could deal with. Maybe he's just continued to run from that. If that's the case, he's pretty good at it, because he certainly left no trail after Wyoming.
There's a lot of young men that move out here. I was one of them. You know, there's something about the lifestyle out here that appealed to me, and it attracts a lot of young men from all over.
But experience also makes it difficult for Detective Thompson to believe that Braden could go so long without surfacing somewhere.
It's hard for an adult to just, you know, drop out, because eventually you have to get a job, you have to make some money, you can find a place to live, typically, that sort of thing. And those are things that generate a trail. And, you know, to just completely disconnect from your family and your friends and not reach out to them at all, it would be very difficult to do. If he's a fugitive, he's the darndest one I've looked for in a long time.
Braden's loved ones continue to hope that Braden is alive and living in the great western wilderness he always dreamed of.
In our hearts, we believe he's still there. I think he's a little bit more than confused. I think it's more humiliated, very, very upset with himself that he disappointed himself and maybe us.
Typically, he has not been